unreal flip of fortunes. It's crazy kind of how fast things turn. Florida has their crazy turn where all of a sudden they're jumped up. Miami, like a sieve, getting flips, and guys that didn't flip to them that they thought they were going to get, guys that have committed elsewhere, they're dropping like a rock. And Florida State with a meteoric rise from like 58 up to 23. The only kind of negative today, Solomon Thomas did end up flipping to LSU, but we've got a lot of good news. We've got a lot more flips coming our way, and not just bodies, guys. And this is the thing we've talked about in my philosophy about kind of how we recruited that needed to change. No, they got a good 8 or 9 guys in here that will have a chance to compete and get some snaps as freshmen. They really went after size. They got some perfect fits for the schemes coming in. You mentioned it. I'll do that before we get into the names real quick. Of course, Gus Malzahn was announced before the game Saturday. That's been kind of known. Then the defensive hire comes later. So getting Gus in here, we believe Herb Hand is going to be the offensive line coach. They just kind of got the coordinators in place in a hurry to do this early signing day to get the recruiting done. And I think we'll get the assistant coaches later. But yeah, Gus Malzahn, all of a sudden Josh Petty didn't commit to Georgia Tech today. There's a 6'7" offensive tackle who's an elite offensive tackle, probably be the best tackle we've signed in since I can remember, and Chasen Brown. If we can get him from UCF to follow Gus over, you get Kevin Sperry to end up signing, who is a perfect fit, who's got the arm out of his butt and can really run the ball. Tons of great things happening. The biggest news on the coaching front today, though, was Pot Roast said his goodbyes at Nebraska, and it's official. It's reported, done deal. Pot Roast, a.k.a. Terrence Snipeman, will be the defensive line coach for FSU, and he's as hot a name as there is in the game. A good place to start with. This one isn't a flip. I said Solomon Thomas. If we would have landed him, I would have considered that a flip. That's one of the things these kids do. Well, they'll stay committed, but they're done. He's been committed to LSU for a while now, in my opinion. It's just kind of it would have been a shock to get him. So he left. But the other guy, Kevin Wynn, he did stick. And I consider that a flip because I think he was it was between South Carolina and Georgia up until very recently. And getting Pot Roast locked in was a big part of that. He's the best defensive tackle we've signed in 8 years since Marvin Wilson. And he is the perfect nose tackle for Tony Elliott's defense and for our guy Pot Roast. Huge signing. I mean, that's one of those guys, that can come in and play as a freshman, and you can build a floor of your program over a couple of years. Can't speak highly enough about that Kevin Wynn signing. Mark, fired up about it, and that's to the staff. That was a big one, getting that staff in here. And then we'll get into more of it, but I'll let you ask the next question.
Well, absolutely. So let's take it one piece at a time, and we'll stay with the recruiting class here. So the big news are the flips. So you've touched upon a few here and there. So you just want to line them up and mow them down for us?
I got them lined up. Kevin Wynn, again, wasn't a flip. I considered that one. But the big flips, there was 3 or 4 of them. The first one we got was Shamar Arnoux, the four-star DB. It was between him and Conan Baney all summer. We weren't sure which one we were going to get. Conan Baney ended up committing elsewhere, and it was kind of like a lost cause. The season fell apart. We didn't know if Pat Surtain was going to be back. He, of course, interviewed for the Southern Miss job, rumors of NFL jobs, but Shamar Arnoux out of nowhere commits. His edit was kind of vertically aligned, and it was a giant paragraph basically saying, "I'm coming to Florida State because of Pat Surtain." So that in itself is a breath of fresh air and can tell us guys that, hey, maybe Pat Surtain's locked in. Somebody asked, is it 100% that Pat's staying? Well, 100. There's nothing in life that's 100%, guys. But that is a dang good sign. I don't think there's any way he would have done that or worded his post that way if Pat Surtain wasn't planning on being here this year. So that's probably the smallest one of the 3 big flips we got, but definitely a big one and a perfect kind of DB for Pat Surtain. I don't think anybody's going to question his evaluation and who he decides to bring in.
Yeah. Excellent stuff.
The next one. Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, go right to it.
Yeah, the next one, Ousmane Kromah. Now, this is a name that, absolute elite running back. was committed to Georgia. Florida State had been on him hard. A lot of people, myself included, thought he was going to end up being here. Same story. The season fell apart, blamed up coaching staff, ends up committing to Georgia. We get that flip today. Now, he hasn't signed his grant and aid yet, but the people that I've talked to behind the scenes, they're not worried about it. It's just a matter of time. He wouldn't have made this move. Like, he's not one of these kids that's just flippantly going to flip and do all that stuff. I'm pretty sure he's locked in as a Nole. But Ousmane Kromah grew up playing with Cam Davis in Georgia. They're great friends. Cam posted a picture of those two guys to get him in. A lot of people were saying we need to really hit the portal for running backs. I don't subscribe to that. The problem with our running backs this year was the offensive line. And that's going to get addressed again with those coordinators we brought in. They're addressing those needs. So to add Kromah to Davis, maybe you get one guy out of the portal. We'll see. All of a sudden, that running back room is looking really good. CJ Campbell, who they've offered as a transfer, probably could come in. But this guy right here, he's that guy. He's an absolute stud. And it's not a surprise to me and a couple other people, like in that we had a good idea, we had a chance. But yeah, it's certainly a surprise to get him to commit today. And anytime you're 2-10 and you flip a player from Georgia, I mean, what can you say? What can you say about what Gus Malzahn, these guys have done in a short amount of time?
Yeah. So is this a thought process that these are like just relationships that have been built for a long, long time and are just been somewhat under the surface?
So reading into this one, the relationship, Yak, looking like Yak may end up on the staff. And that wouldn't surprise me a bit because, yeah, this is a 3-year, 4-year relationship with this guy. Shamar Arnoux wasn't quite as long. Like, they got on him like last summer, I think. But Ousmane Kromah is somebody that they have wanted for a long, long time. So, yeah, definitely a big one. And these guys, there was such uncertainty. You can't blame somebody for not signing up for whatever new coordinator is going to come in. I think getting Gus in here, them really fixing the line of scrimmages and being their focus, I think that was a big part of getting him back in this class.
Then there's always the momentum that can either go for you or against you. It's easy to go against you. It's tough to get it going for you, especially coming off that season. But if you can somehow get one guy to believe and then a second guy to believe, and then he can show the other guys that, well, these two, your two buddies, and obviously almost all these guys are connected in some way in regards to they played together, they played against each other, or they're just connected on social media, or they played against, a brother or somebody then you start to sell the vision.
When you look at Gus Malzahn, as I keep hammering on the offensive line, like if you're Ousmane Kromah, you've got 20 years of Gus Malzahn offenses that even if the team doesn't do good, they're a 5-7 team, they're still a top 10 rushing offense, and the running back still has 1,300 yards. So, Gus Malzahn getting in here, it couldn't hurt. I'm sure that's a huge part of it. And the same thing for the next guy. The next big flip is a guy that, to your point, Jayvan Boggs, he's a guy that year-long relationship that they've been after, ends up committing to UCF and Gus Malzahn and that great running offense due to the, kind of issues at Florida State. Next thing you know, boop, all of a sudden Gus comes back and he posts some eyeballs like, dang, like this is ironic. And sure enough, he ends up flipping today. Jayvan Boggs, a 4-star wide receiver that this coaching staff absolutely loves. Florida was after another one of these guys that he's no kind of body. This is a guy that's going to come in and compete.
Absolutely. Are we done yet? You got like 6 of them, right?
Those are the flips. There's some other flips, but they had already, happened. Kevin Sperry, the 4-star quarterback, had previously flipped and committed to us. So that's another good one. He's a beast, but was kind of already there. Same with Chase Lofton, the tight end. He had flipped from Nebraska. He's the number 2 player in Nebraska. Folks had kind of thought maybe he would flip back or go somewhere else. He ended up walking in and committing. And as you look at Jayvan Boggs right here, 6 foot. That's what I thought. He's 6'1.5", so close to 6'1". He's one of these shorter guys. He's kind of the foil to the rest of the wide receivers we'll talk about in this class. They really went after size with the guys they have signed, and the guys that are going to push the sign. So He's got a unique role in the offense, and for them to go after him the way they did, they love him and his athleticism. So, really excited to see what he can do here at Florida State.
Do you have any backstory on Lofton in regards to being able to go up and grab a guy from Nebraska?
Yeah, man, I think it's the first player we've ever signed from the state.
Huh.
If I'm being honest, I don't know what the exact impetus of it was. I think it's largely to do with the success of our freshman tight ends and kind of how Nebraska's season went, if I had to guess. But hats off to them for getting that relationship done and getting them in there, because Thompson's a damn good recruiter at tight end. I mean, you saw what he did with Landon Thomas and Amari Williams this past year. And Mike Norvell is really high on him. Like, they really believe he can come in here and compete. He was talking about in his press conference, of course, Amari Williams, the 5-star we brought in last year, he was a DN / tight end. So they're still going to want to work him at DN this spring. He's a guy who reclassified. So, as a pretty much senior in high school, he played tight end for us. They're going to be able to work him in spring at the DN, see how that's going to work out, try to play him both ways. And Mike feels real comfortable that Lofton can come in and kind of fill that hole and provide that second or third tight end on the roster for him, like, immediately. I think, that's part of it, that, like, how hard they went at him and made him a priority is how they got him there.
So if you dropped out of space and saw that Florida State had the 27th ranked class in the country, you would be somewhat disappointed about that, of course. But considering what's happened on the football field and how it's translated to what looked like the snowball rolling in the wrong direction downhill, that it's been recovered to this degree. So Florida State up from where's the lowest you've seen them ranked?
We were up to 23 before we lost Solomon Thomas. And
no, but what's the lowest you've seen?
Oh, I think 58.
58.
It might have got down to like 70 at some point, but I think it was 58 here a couple days ago. So a heck of a climb for sure.
Yeah, 27 with 17 commits. So to put that in perspective, Maryland's in front of them, but they've got 23 commits. So that's not even accurate in terms of per player evaluation there.
The average? What's the average?
Yeah, let's see here.
I'm guessing probably 89, 88.
Yeah, we're at 88.9. Yeah.
And that's a boost. I don't even know what it was before, but that definitely got boosted a little bit today. And there's, we got more of the commits to go, but now's a good time to talk about, how it could possibly go up. The rest of these aren't going to go up. We talked about it off air, but we just found out right before coming on air, the kind of breaking news right now. Josh Petty, the longtime Florida State commit, ends up flipping to Georgia Tech. It's a whole hullabaloo. He didn't sign. He decided to hold off on that. So rumor mill is rumbling, and all of a sudden there's a little bit of hope you can get the blue chip tackle Josh Petty in the class. If you could do that, that should pretty much fill the whole of Solomon Thomas, jump you up a few spots. And there's also the real diamond in the rough would be the third UCF guy that I would hope we could possibly get, and Chasten Brown, who is 6'7", absolute specimen, like prototype offensive tackle. So yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to climb. Also, Tayshawn Gelsey will not be signing with Florida. He's a 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver / tight end. Florida was recruiting him. They just wanted him at tight end. If Florida State's willing to give him a chance at wide receiver, pretty sure he's going to end up in this class as well. So Mike Norvell said another, 4, 5 guys maybe. I don't think he was counting the JUCO guys maybe in that number, because I thought we were more at 15 than 17. But yeah, definitely could get up to 20, maybe 21 before it's all over with. And if they do that, I'm hoping, if we climb into the top 25, I will be just skipping down the road. But there's an outside chance. Let Miami drop a few spots and let us get some surprises on some of these that push the commitment down the road. We're going to see what they're going to do. If they're going to fire Lance Guidry, and, third year in a row having to get rid of coordinators, some funny stuff could happen. So, yeah, it's unreal. I'm fired up, Mark. I can tell. I'm sure the audience can tell by how fast I'm talking. But Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Long time coming. That was a rough 2 or 3 months, brother.
Yeah, it has been.
But
Josh
I
Petty. So did he say when he's going to sign?
negative. Like this, he just announced it right before we went live.
Okay. Okay.
But he chose not to sign. I
All
believe.
right.
I'm not sure if he said he was going to push it to the regular signing day, but definitely not signing with Georgia Tech today.
Okay, you did say that that he just announced, because I'm mixing him up with somebody else. I've heard so many names today.
Bro, I'm with you.
Another top guy that was supposed to sign somewhere and he didn't, and then said he was going to announce on Friday, but that was not Josh Petty. Okay, yeah, Josh Petty, because in listening to some of the national analysis today, there was a lot of talk about Georgia Tech recruiting better than they have in forever, and that was when it was assumed that Josh Petty was going to be one of the commits coming in.
Yep, they definitely upped their commitment to football. There's no doubt, and they're riding high. But it's still Georgia Tech at the end of the day. It's like, when Florida State, when they've got the momentum, it definitely wouldn't be surprise me for them to get them in there. And just, I can't speak enough about this staff. It was kind of when it was just Gus and you didn't know who the O-line coach is going to be. When it was just Tony White, there was some questions. But having Gus, Tony, and now Pot Roast locked in, and we're hoping Herb Hand, like Florida State, if this thing rolls the way it ends up like we think it's going to go, we're going to have one of the best staffs in the country. I truly believe that. We'll see how it goes, but it's going to have to get fixed quick. They don't have to go win 10 games next year, but you're in a position where if you can show like Florida did this year that you can win 6 or 7 games next year with this staff, especially Pot Roast, man. My dogs are going crazy.
They're pumped up too.
Yeah, when I get to talking, they get fired up and they start fighting. But Pot Roast, man, elite. I know we're talking high school, but that entire front seven has hit the portal. Okay, and now these guys are. There's a kid named Judy, a couple other ones that are retweeting, Death Row for Life, which is his Twitter caption, and I guess it's something to do with their group and stuff. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those guys come. One of them is this white defensive end, number 90, named James Williams, who's like a sophomore, I believe, going into his junior year, maybe a redshirt freshman because he redshirted last year, but huge potential, 6'6", 250 pounds. And in his interview recently, as my dogs knocked my lights off the shelf, he starts talking about Pot Roast and kind of his family issues that he had and kind of having a tough start at Nebraska, missing meetings, things of that nature. And he could have been kicked out, like maybe coordinators, like the writing was on the wall. But Pot Roast really took him under his wing. And he said he was a father figure at the beginning of it. And as he started talking and kept talking, like tears are filling his eyes. And he says, no, he is my father. I consider him my father. So I think you can pencil him in to come through the portal to Florida State, along with several other players that literally played in that offense and had, gave up no rushing touchdowns in a single year. You can get Daryl Jackson, you can get Farmer to come back, and all of a sudden you add, 3 or 4 guys from that front seven, along with the JUCO defensive tackle they signed in, what's his name? Tylen Cleveland, a couple other guys thereafter. You can really turn this D-line around in 1 year. And it's not like our D-line was terrible. It certainly wasn't. It wasn't what Florida State expects, but this defense was heavily hampered by the offense. So super, super, super excited about what this defense could be, especially that front seven in this 3-3-5 defense and kind of the pieces that they got bringing in.
You wonder if some of these coaches are intrigued by building something from the ground up, coming in and saying, okay, this thing has been leveled to the ground and we got a chance to make it exactly what we want it to be, and work with a lot of young players and not a whole lot of attitude, and show what we can do in building something that's just has to be a total reset.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd really have to talk to somebody. I think part of it is that in that when you're as bad as we were this year in 2-10, like they'd have to really mess up to not jump the offense at least 50 spots and the defense at least 20 spots. So there's that. You do have that kind of leverage there. It's not like you're taking a coordinator job that had the number 1 defense. So if you have the number 10 defense, you made a mistake. I'm sure that was part of the conversation with Norvell when they came in. Like this, Tony White, this is going to be my defense, right? You're not going to be telling me we need to do this. And obviously he wanted to bring that 3-3-5, not to keep the 4-2-5. So I agree there. And another part of it is just we as fans and even some media people and things of that nature, we see 2-10 and think like, oh, that's the end of the world. Who would ever want to take that job? But these coaches have egos and they've watched football for 30, 40, 50 years, however long they've been around, and they know what Florida State is. We were just 13-0 and got snubbed from the college football playoff last year. And it's not like we were so untalented. We weren't the worst talented team in the ACC this year. There's just some things really, really went on bad behind the scenes. So, yeah, I think, Nebraska found out. Nebraska is nowhere near as a bad situation as us. Our old Pfluger, our buddy Pfluger got on there and was like, oh, I can't believe they made this lateral move. Guys, Nebraska learned this is not a lateral move, okay? They may be both power, conference, whatever you want to say, but there's a big difference in Nebraska and Florida State when it comes to brand and all that good stuff. It's been 30 years since Nebraska could kind of hold our jock strap. It just is what it is, and it's in Nebraska. So these guys that went from Texas and Florida up there to play, they're probably going to follow their guy. And Matt Rule even said something about it a couple weeks ago. He thought they would have 30 to 50 guys in the portal. So, yeah, I think it's just a perfect storm. I can't be higher on the hires, man. I know some people were kind of rough on him, but I think Mike Norvell, he said he was going to get this thing fixed quick, and I think he's planning on doing that. He mentioned in his press conference, Ira Shafel asked him a question. He's like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but in reference to the exit interviews and who will possibly hit the portal and who won't and things of that nature, he said, Mike, well, when you're talking to these guys and they're, and they're telling you that they're going to do all the right things and telling you everything you want to hear, they're bought in for the climb and what it's going to take, but their actions haven't matched up to that point, like at all. Like, how do you parse that? And he said flatly, oh, those guys don't get a chance. They're gone. So, I mean, you kind of see where he's at with it. So there's a group of guys that's definitely going to be gone. And the other guys, as far as if they want to stay, they're going to have to walk into an absolute grind. From hearing Mike talk today, like it's a legitimate, like desperation. They aren't playing around. It's not going to be much fun. And everybody that came in this class and will come in the portal, they're going to get that upfront knowledge that it's going to be a grind, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get things right.
All right.
You want to run through the rest of these commits, and then we can talk a little quarterback before we get out of here?
Let's do that.
So we hit the flips, the big time 4 stars, on down to Zay Thomas, signed 4-star defensive back, the first ever Seminole Indian to play football for Florida State. So a really cool story, and a dope defensive back from American Heritage, with roots going back there with Surtain, and another kind of indicator that possibly Surtain is going to be with us here for at least another year or two. So big keep there. That wasn't a surprise. Also Mario Nash, I believe he's the number 10 offensive tackle on one of the sites. It's these offensive linemen. Every site has them different. One offensive tackle, one interior O-line. But yeah, I think he's like a 12 interior on one of them and a number 10 O tackle on another. So that's a nice pickup. Daryl and Mandrell Desir are 2 guys who Florida State they camped here. They'd visited. Florida State wasn't super high on them. Mike Norvell intimated that the size might not have quite been there. Weren't sure how they were going to fit. But with everything that went on, you lose Myron Charles. You may lose Kevin Wynn. He said they visited a game or saw some film, and just all of a sudden, like the size came around. They really grew and just really slinging guys around. So they became a priority for him at that point. I think these guys were just waiting. Like as soon as they got the go ahead, they were going to be locked in. And twin brothers. We've always heard about brothers on teams being a good thing for the culture. Coach Mike Martin made sure every single year he had brothers on his baseball team. So really cool. These are super great kids. They're like totally locked in and ready to come get to work. We'll see that. And again, they fit the scheme that they want to come in for that weak side defensive end for the 3-3-5. Then Max Redmond, the 3-star safety. a guy who's been locked in for a long time. We signed the kicker, Bruno Roos, year after getting Fitzgerald in here, not Fitzgerald, Jake Weiner in here. You get this guy, so really, really excited about that. And then the last one was the guy I mentioned earlier, Tylen Cleveland, the JUCO defensive tackle. One name I'm missing off here is Jordan Scott. I see him. You got him right there. Jordan Scott is another guy. He is 6'7". He's like the number 2 JUCO wide receiver. So really fitting that bill of the size they want to bring in. They really felt like they lacked size in those rooms this year, on the lines and at the wide receiver positions, and that's something they really wanted to get fixed. So Jordan Scott is somebody, that could possibly fill that Johnny Wilson role if possible. Like I talked about this a lot. I don't care what level they come from. We found out this year we need guys that just can play and execute. If you're open, yada yada. So we'll see if it translates. But yeah, college football is there's so much more parity now in the lower divisions, every division, that these things really translate. You see it with Miami. You see it with all these teams that brought in a ton of transfers and had success early. So super excited about him. And the other guy, Sean Perot, he's another three-star offensive tackle that we flipped from UCF. That's a flip that I forgot to mention, but I think that's about all of them. Yeah, definitely a pretty darn good class, my friend.